I'm going to explain the movie Tale of Tales, released in 2015. The film is divided into three stories. The first story centers around the king and queen of a kingdom. We learn that the queen has a rare medical condition that prevents her from becoming a mother. Because of this, she is always upset. Seeing his wife in this state, the king calls the best doctors from all around the land, but unfortunately, none of them can diagnose her illness. Despite this, the king tries his best to make the queen happy. One day, he invites some circus performers to the palace. Suddenly, the queen notices that one of the performers is pregnant, and she becomes jealous, smashing things in her chamber. When the king finds out, he visits her room and promises to do anything to solve her problem. Late at night, a strange necromancer arrives at the castle, claiming he can help the queen with her pregnancy issue. However, the necromancer insists that the queen can have a baby. According to him, consuming the heart of a sea monster, prepared by a pure and unmarried woman, will ensure the queen's pregnancy. Determined to save his wife, the king sets out the next day on his dangerous mission. He tracks down the creature in a river, waiting until it sleeps before bravely entering the ocean to confront it. After a fierce battle, the king succeeds in killing the beast, but not without sustaining critical injuries. Despite his success, the king's wounds prove fatal, and he dies shortly after extracting the creature's heart. After retrieving the sea monster's heart, the queen returns to the castle, carefully concealing it with a cloth. Following a thorough search, a maiden is discovered among the castle staff who is both unmarried and pure. During the preparation, the maiden experiences strange sensations and unexpectedly becomes pregnant. The queen consumes the prepared heart, and soon after, she also becomes pregnant. Both the queen and the maiden give birth at the same time. Their sons, seemingly the same age, are named Elias and Jonah. 16 years later, the movie moves forward in time. Elias and Jonah, now young adults, live in the kingdom. Even though they were born on the same day and look like twins, they share a deep bond and friendship. The queen, however, disapproves of their closeness because of their different social statuses. She insists that Elias, now a prince, should not associate with Jonah, the maid's son. Despite his mother's objections, Elias ignores her wishes and continues to meet with Jonah. Despite the queen's threats to the maid to keep Jonah away from Elias, the two young men continue to meet in secret. Their bond deepens until one day Jonah, dressed in Elias's clothes, faces the queen. When his costume is discovered, the queen decides to send Jonah away from the kingdom. Elias tries to stop Jonah from being sent away but cannot change his mother's mind. Jonah takes a knife and cuts a tree, causing water to flow. He cryptically tells Elias that as long as the water remains clear, he is safe, but if it turns red, it means his life is in danger. Elias watches the water closely, and one day it turns red, a sign that Jonah is in danger. Worried about his friend, Elias leaves the kingdom without telling his mother. After searching for a long time, Elias finds Jonah's home, where he finds that Jonah got married and settled down. Elias discovers that Jonah went into the forest 5 days ago and hasn't come back. Elias decides to find him no matter what, while the queen gets more and more worried about where her son is. With no other choice, she goes back to the necromancer. The necromancer says she must sacrifice a life if she wants Jonah to come back safely, and the queen agrees right away. Meanwhile, Jonah is found hurt in a cave, attacked by a flying creature. Elias arrives just in time to hear Jonah's cries and rushes to help him, finally killing the creature with his sword. Without Elias knowing, the creature he defeated was actually his own mother. As part of the agreement where one life must be given for another, as they agreed on earlier. This news shocks Elias and makes him feel torn, trying to understand what happened and the sacrifices made to protect those he cares about. In the last part of the first story, Elias becomes the king of the kingdom, showing the end of his journey. Now that Elias is the ruler, the story moves to the next part, focusing on a different king and two old sisters named Ima and Dora. In this new story, there is a king who loves drinking and desires to marry someone, but he cannot find the right queen. Here we meet two older sisters named Dora and Ima who live near the palace. Dora is clever but selfish, while Ima is honest. They rarely leave home and have resigned themselves to a quiet life, though their voices still sound young. One morning, The king hears Dora singing and loves her voice immediately. He decides to meet her, hoping she is young and beautiful. The sisters worry about how the king will react to their true age. After thinking about it, Dora asks the king to come back in a week so she can prepare herself. During that time, they try different ways to look younger. Dora uses herbs on her fingers, but they show her age. In contrast, Ima sucks on her finger for days, magically making it look young by the time the king returns. When the king comes back, Dora cleverly shows Ima's rejuvenated finger as her own. The king believes he has found his true love and agrees to Dora's condition of meeting only in the dark. That night, Ima helps Dora look younger. The king is shocked the next morning when he sees Dora's true age. Angry, he orders her to be thrown out of a window, but Dora survives the fall. In the forest, Dora meets a witch who feels sorry for her and turns her into a beautiful young woman with long hair. When the king comes to the forest to hunt, he falls in love with this new young Dora immediately and makes her his queen. Confused by her change, Dora invites Ima to her wedding. Ima cannot believe how young her sister looks now and asks Dora how she did it. Dora jokes that she peeled off her old skin. Taking her seriously, Ima asks a blacksmith to help her peel off her skin in exchange for a necklace. Ima returns to the castle weak and dies soon after. Sadly, the magic that made Dora young does not last. She starts getting old again, and her skin wrinkles. Afraid of being rejected and unable to face becoming old again, Dora runs away from the castle. The narrative concludes sadly as Dora reverts completely to her older self, ending her brief and ill-fated moment of youth. After the second story, the film moves to the third story about a strange king who lost his queen a long time ago. He has a daughter named Violet whom he has never really loved. The king's odd behavior is clear when he lets a parasite bug feed on his blood instead of swatting it away. He keeps the bug in a glass box and feeds it every day until it grows very large. Meanwhile, Violet grows into a beautiful young woman who dreams of finding a prince. But her father, obsessed with the parasite, ignores her. One day, the parasite gets sick and dies, making the king very sad. He peels its skin off and decides it's time for Violet to marry. He announces a contest where the person who can guess the name of the bug will marry his daughter. Violet is both happy and upset because she can't choose her own husband. Despite many tries, no one can guess the bug's name until a strange ogre comes to the palace and guesses it correctly by smelling the skin. Devastated, Violet tries to jump from the roof, but the king stops her, reminding her of his promise. With no other choice, Violet agrees to marry the ogre. The ogre takes Violet to a remote mountain where she cries every day. During one of his hunting trips, Violet sees another woman on a nearby mountain and asks for help, explaining her situation. The woman promises to come back the next day with her family to rescue Violet. The next day, the woman and her family arrive, but the ogre chases them. They manage to cut the rope, causing the ogre to fall. However, the ogre later finds them and kills each family member. He then chases Violet into a cave and tries to hug her. In a critical moment, Violet pretends to care for the ogre but stabs him with a knife when he lets his guard down. She returns to the palace with the ogre's head and, crying, says, "This is the husband you chose." The king is heartbroken and falls to his knees. The film ends with Violet becoming the queen of the kingdom, showing a bittersweet victory after the tragedy and darkness that led her to the throne.